So if you feel like your customers aren't giving you much time and they're getting straight into how much does this cost, or, oh, I need to ask these direct questions, it's because you're giving away too much jargon. You tell a story, their logical brain, which is doing that to you, will short circuit and they will just listen.
You're listening to The Successful Bookkeeper with your host, Michael Palmer. Listen each week as inspiring guests share their secrets of success to help you increase your confidence, work smarter, and build a business you love. This episode of The Successful Bookkeeper is brought to you by PureBookkeeping.com, the proven system to grow your bookkeeping business.
Welcome back to the Successful Bookkeeper podcast. I'm your host, Michael Palmer, and today's show is going to be fantastic. Our guest is the author of the Introvert's Edge book series, which includes his latest edition titled The Introvert's Edge to Networking. Matthew Pollard, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much for having me, mate. I'm excited to be here.
I'm excited to have you. And literally, when I read your bio, I just thought, wow, this is going to be an amazing show for our listener. And instead of me telling that story, I'm going to ask you to tell us about you and your career journey leading up to this point.
Sure. So I think, look, most people, and I think this is pretty important to say up front, most people, when they hear someone like me on a podcast or see me speak from stage, they naturally project extroversion upon me. They're like, oh, successful guy. He's clearly articulate from stage or on a podcast. He's just got that natural gift of gab. Clearly, he was just born to be successful. And I think we do that all the time. We project extroversion on anyone we see as successful. Never mind people like Ivan Misner, the founder of BNI, is an introvert, or, Zig Ziglar, the most well-known sales trainer on the planet, is extroverted, or Oprah Winfrey and Ellen DeGeneres. Even though we believe we can't do small talk, they're both introverted. So it's so important for people to understand that we've got to stop seeing people as the person that they are today and start remembering that everybody starts somewhere. And for me, I had a reading speed of a sixth grader in late high school. I mean, I was horribly introverted, and years of feeling like the slow kid really beat up my confidence. And then, luckily enough, I was diagnosed with this thing called Irlen syndrome in late high school, and I was given this pair of funny colored lenses, which really didn't help with the confidence, but I could miraculously learn to read. And while I couldn't exactly read like everyone else, I at least got to start the process of learning. And for nearly 2 years, I just, I battled it out, and I managed to graduate in the top 20% of my class. But I think my family could see that I was just exhausted. I mean, I had no idea what I wanted to do with my life. And they thought if I went to university, and I agreed, there was no way I was going to make it through. So we all agreed that I was going to take a year to find myself. And I took a job at a real estate agency. And while I'm sure everyone thinks he was the guy out selling, I wasn't. I was the guy in the back office doing data entry with a look on my face saying, hey, don't speak to me. I'm here to find myself. Well, 3 weeks into that job, I had a conversation with my boss, and he's like, Matt, I'm so sorry to tell you this. We just had a phone call from head office, and they've decided they're going to close down this premise. You're out of a job. So here I am 3 weeks into a job where I'm now out of work. And this is Australia at Christmas time. I mean, you can't get work at Australia at Christmas time. People go on holidays on the 20th of December, and they don't come back till the 15th or 20th of January. I mean, it's summer and Christmas at the same time. So I went straight to the place to look, straight to the news agency to get out the classifieds and look for jobs that were available. I mean, there was no way I was going to go tell my father 3 weeks in that I'm out of work. I mean, my dad broke his back 80 hours a week to support the family. And the only jobs I could find were these things called commission-only sales roles, which is, I'm sure you can imagine, were terrifying for me. But the 3 jobs that were there, I applied for all 3. Then I got 3 interviews. Then I got offered 3 jobs. And I went, well, maybe they see something in me that I don't see in myself, because, I mean, even the thought of talking to my own friends daunted me. Well, my manager really put that excitement to bed really quickly. I mean, I took this job selling B2B telecommunications. And he, in the first day, he said, Matt, we just throw mud up against the wall and we see what sticks. We hire everybody. So here I am, confident for a second. Now I'm like, oh, I'm just the mud. So this is where I guess I started. And, what happened was after 5 days worth of product training and not a single second of sales training, I get thrown on this road. It's called Sydney Road in Melbourne, Australia. There's over 1,000 retail stores on each side. And I got told to go sell. Well, I took a deep breath and then went to walk in and went, hang on a second, no one's actually told me how to sell. I knew about the product. I didn't know actually what to say when I walked in the door. So I took another deep breath. I walked in, and luckily enough, I was politely told to leave. Shortly after that, I was less politely told to leave than I was sworn at. But my personal favorite was always getting told to go get a real job. I mean, this was the only job I could get. So door after door, this just kept happening over and over and over until I got to my 93rd door, where I made my first sale. And I remember I was ecstatic for like 45 seconds. I'd made $70, which actually wasn't a small amount of money back then. But then I had this realization, I got to do this again tomorrow and the next day and the next. And I think this is one of these critical moments for me. And I think for everybody, we either make this decision to grind it out, hustle it out, assume this is the way it's going to be, and just work harder, which, it's a great mindset to have as long as you've got a great strategy, or people just give up. That's what happened to 18 in my group of 20 in my training group. But I decided there had to be a different way. I wasn't willing to tell my father that I'd quit a job. I also wasn't willing to just grind it out for the next year and have a horrible year. So I decided that sales had to be a system. And I went looking for that system. And of course, I couldn't pick up a Brian Tracy book or a Zig Ziglar book. It would have taken me a year to apply it. A year to read it, let alone apply it. But I discovered YouTube at that time, and I typed in sales system, and all these videos came up. And so every day I would focus on one element of the system. I'd spend 8 hours out in the field applying what I'd learned. Then I'd rush home, spend 8 hours practicing the next step or perfecting the step I was working on. And then weekends, I'd spend 16 hours practicing. I'm sure to everyone listening, this does not sound like fun. But yet I quickly got better. Soon it was 78 doors before a sale, then 46, then 31, then 28. Then 16, then 9. Eventually, I got it down to 3 doors on average every single sale. Now, that happened over the course of about 6 weeks, and my manager then pulls me into his office. And I thought I was in trouble. I was the quiet guy that handed my paperwork in downstairs, didn't really speak to any of the boisterous salespeople upstairs talking about how hard the market had got or how they closed that deal. And my manager looked at me and he's like, Matt, we're kind of a little bit blown away by this. We just got our national sales figures. And it turns out you're the number one salesperson in the company. And this was the largest sales and marketing company in the Southern Hemisphere, over 1,000 sales reps across the country. And I had gone from really terrified to sell to being the number one in the company. Well, shortly after that, I was promoted. I don't know why everyone thinks because you can sell, you can manage. I was terrible at managing, and I had to go back to YouTube to learn after losing my first group of 20 trainees. The mud up against the wall, nothing stuck. Well, back to YouTube, learned to manage, and fastly I became good at managing. And because, again, I was following a system which allows introverts to be successful, well, I got promoted about 7 times in the space of about 12 months. Then I decided to start up my own business. And gosh, if you fast forward just shy of a decade, I'd been responsible for 5 multi-million-dollar success stories. So that was kind of my life up until I turned 30. And then, I moved to the US and started the Introvert's Edge book series.
Wow. What a story. What a story. And when I'm listening to that story, I'm thinking, wow, how did you go from 72? Obviously, I want to know the system. That's what I want to know. It sounds incredible. And I know our listener right now is probably thinking the same, because I would imagine they're thinking they have similar feelings about the sales, but yet they haven't gone and watched all the YouTube videos. They haven't banged on 70 doors every single day to sort of figure it out and find the way. You've done that for them. So what's some of the secret behind that?
Well, I think there are a couple of really important steps. And, this was really surprising for me, because when I moved to the US, I decided that I really wanted to share what I'd learned about how to create rapid growth within businesses. And it's funny that, we're talking on a podcast specifically designed to speak to, accountants and bookkeepers predominantly, because I actually just got back from speaking at an accounting association. And I delivered this keynote called Rapid Growth the Lazy Way, or which we've just transformed into Rapid Growth in the Face of Uncertainty because of COVID times. But I talk about what I call the 3 steps to rapid growth. And I talk about the fact that most people find sales uncomfortable because of the fact that they start with sales. And if you start with sales, you've kind of already lost. I talk about this in my networking book, that if you know how to differentiate yourself and you know how to niche down so people see you as the only logical choice, a lot of the heavy lifting in sales is kind of removed for you, and sales becomes a lot simpler. So it's really, really important to understand that a lot of people go, oh, well, I need to get better at sales, but sales can be kind of now it shouldn't be, and it doesn't need to be confrontational, and that's because you've spent no time learning it. I mean, how long do we spend learning how to be a bookkeeper? How long do we spend learning how to be an accountant? How long do we really spend learning to be a salesperson? And well, in truth, no time, because you don't even want to consider yourself a salesperson, except for the fact that if it's just you and your laptop, look around. If you don't see any salespeople, you're the salesperson, right? That's what Peter Thiel talks about in his book, 0 to 1. So we need to understand we are in sales. And this is what I kind of started to tell people about when I first came to the country. I started saying to people, here are the 3 steps to rapid growth. And I talk about the first 2. And before I got into sales, I would talk about my own personal journey, just the journey I just shared with everybody today. And what I'd find is so many people would come up afterwards and they would say, Matt, I really appreciate, you sharing all this value with us. But I have to say, what blew me away more than anything is your story of introversion. I had no idea as an introvert that I could succeed. I mean, my thesis is that I believe introverts make better salespeople than extroverts because they're to follow a system, because without it, we're terrible at it. And in truth, repeatable system, as we know, always delivers improving results and eventually better results than somebody who just wings it. And that's the same for sales. It's not a gift of gab process. So what was really interesting is that even though I was sharing all these strategies, it was the knowledge that somebody can sell as an introvert or network as an introvert that really transformed a lot of people. Because why would you bother trying to run a marathon if you know you're not going to be able to finish? It just seems pointless. So that's why we kind of shy away from it. It's this foreign language. We don't want to talk about it. We know we're not going to be good at it, so we don't even try. And then when somebody calls us, we don't really have a plan, and we go through the motions, and then we're like, well, why is everyone fighting us on price? Why is everyone making it hard for us? I don't want to do any of those bulldog techniques. It's a hamster wheel of struggling to find interested people, trying to set ourselves apart and make the sale. So that's really what I tried to shift. And what I really did is, I have to say, I didn't even want to write these books. I started telling people about my story and people started sharing the value. And I kept telling other people that were in the world of sales that somebody should write a book on introverted selling. And everyone said to me, no one's going to buy a book on introverted selling. Like, introverts don't want to learn how to sell. And I went, how is that possible? I mean, there's thousands of books that are focused on sales and everyone perceives them built for extroverts. Why would no one be interested in this? Well, what happened was I ended up working with a ghostwriter as a client that I took from struggling to make any money, really. I mean, he made $27,000 in 2013, $12,000 by October of 2014. And again, not just because of sales, but by differentiating, niching, and creating a sales system. He went to making $40,000 2 weeks later. 6 weeks, he'd make $80,000, $120,000 by the end of the year, and just shy of $300,000 the following year. I mean, he was convinced that people couldn't afford to pay $20,000 for a ghostwritten book. Convinced. But it was just the way he was communicating with people. He was hiding behind email. He wasn't doing it the right way. Now, I mean, he charges $120,000 for a ghostwritten book, and he's booked out till next March. So a lot of times we convince ourselves we can't do these things, and therefore we don't try to do it. So, well, anyway, with Derek, what happened is he's like, Matt, you've got to share these strategies in a book. So eventually we ended up working together to write the first book, The Introvert's Edge, which focuses on sales. I mean, now it's been translated into 15 languages and it's sold over 55,000 copies. And while we absolutely should deep dive into some of the steps and understand really the value of the steps for networking and the steps for sales, the first thing I really want everyone to understand is that introverts aren't second-class citizens. The power of my books, especially in the first chapters where you can download those for free at theintrovertsedge.com and theintrovertsedge.com/networking, is they will help you realize not that you can survive in sales and networking in these so-called extroverted arenas, but thrive, actually dominate in those arenas, not by trying to be more extroverted, not by trying to be someone that you're not, but actually following a step-by-step system where you get to leverage your natural skills. When you get to leverage your natural skills, I mean, introverts have amazing advantages. We're hugely empathetic. We're really great at listening. The problem is, because we find the process so arduous and so daunting, and because there are all these common known tactics that are feel bulldoggy and uncomfortable to us, we just don't do it. But as soon as we realize we can leverage our natural strengths that extroverts a lot of times don't have. I mean, a lot of people will say extroverts aren't the best listeners. They're not the most empathetic. The difference is they know they can learn those skills. And if they work for a big organization, the organization will send them to learn them. But everyone says, poor Johnny, poor Sarah, they're introverted. They can't learn how to sell. They can't learn how to network. And that's the first thing we have to break through. After that, it's actually less about the steps. In truth, there are a series of steps, and we will talk about that will work better than others. But in truth, you'll easily be able to double your sales just by following any series of steps, because then it forces you to perfect the system. One of the things I say to people all the time, my publisher hates me when I say this, but I'm like, go to theintrovertsedge.com, download the first chapter of my book. You can download it for free. You don't need to buy the book for that. You can just download the chapter, understand that you can sell as an introvert, and then literally write down the 7-step process. And then what you can do is grab what you currently say and put it in under those steps. First thing you'll realize is there's some things that you say that just don't fit. Stop saying that to clients. While you think it's important to tell them all those things, it's actually getting in the way of your sale, and they should be replaced with other things, which are generally the things you find that are missing, like asking the right questions, not just questions in general, and telling amazing stories, especially in the accounting and bookkeeping world, that keep you away from jargon. Then you'll realize that there's some things out of order, and you'll fix that, and that will transform your process for 2 reasons. One is that you now have a structured process that is thought out that you can then start to improve on. Even if it's not the best, it'll still work better than what you currently have, and it gives you a basis to then improve. Secondly, it'll allow you to step back and not be so emotional about the sales process. Because here's the difference. When somebody rejects us, when we're just being our natural selves, how could it not feel personal when we get rejected? But when we're using an external process, which is what you should now feel like, well, that's an external system. I mean, Henry Ford, when he produced motor cars, when he had a few bad, they were first doing it and he had a few bad cars come off the line, he didn't go, oh my gosh, it was never meant to produce motor vehicles. He went, what went wrong here? What was the system issue? How do I fix that? And that's what having a sales system or a networking system will do for the average introvert. It'll allow them to look at it externally, use their logical brain, which we're really strong logically, to then analyze the specific element that we feel needs improvement for the next conversation, the next dialogue. It stops us being so emotionally connected and allows us, almost like a scientist, to start playing with certain pieces. Now, that doesn't mean you should change more than one piece at a time. Once you've got a solid process, a comfortable process, even though it seems slower, only change one thing at a time. Because when you change one thing at a time, you know whether it's working or not. If you change multiple things, like a scientist, you don't know what's blowing up in your face. So the real power for introverts is first that they're willing to step into a process, because the extroverts go, well, hang on a second, that seems like stepping back to fly forward. Never mind the fact that the top 10% of all sales performers have a planned presentation. Introvert or extrovert, regardless. Funnily enough, there's a lot more introverts at the top, purely because introverts are more likely to hold on to a system. But if you have a system, you can then improve. And that's what gives introverts the edge over every extrovert. It's the willingness to gravitate to it and then work within it. And that's why they make the best salespeople, the best networkers, the best public speakers. And to everyone here that's going, oh my gosh, after hearing this person speak, there's no way that he's introverted. How he can just put his passion through into this podcast interview. Again, this is all planned, prepared, and practiced, which allows me to not be someone that I'm not, but provide the best version of myself in a way that can help more people. And if you're not spending the time doing that, you're really wasting your time going out to all these prospecting meetings where they're going to end up working with someone that probably can't provide the service the way you can. So you're letting your clients down too. So take the time, learn a system, and perfect it.
I absolutely love it. And I mean, you've unpacked it very well. And really what's exciting is that our listener, so many of them out there that are likely on the other side of being a fantastic salesperson, but they already are a fantastic salesperson with the right system. And you mentioned a few of those. You know, I know our community. I know who's listening right now. They are empathetic. they do care, and they do want to help. Those are authentic, true ways of being for the people that listen to this podcast. You add a system of selling that works for those types of people, it can only but build them into great salespeople that are empathetic, caring, and really experts at doing the work that they do. And so, listener, right now, you are an excellent salesperson. You just don't know it yet.
Absolutely. And I think the important thing for people to realize is that you have the abilities to be an amazing salesperson. All you're missing is the steps. Like, imagine if you were trying to do somebody's bookkeeping or do somebody's tax return and nobody even taught you the steps. Of course, it would feel pretty uncomfortable. I know when I did corporate finance, it felt pretty uncomfortable for me. When I did accounting in university, when I went back, it felt really uncomfortable for me. But then they showed me the steps in the system and it seemed very logical. Well, sales is the exact same way. But the thing is, you have to learn certain things. And the two major things is, firstly, if we get time, we need to talk about differentiation, because accountants all come across as commoditized. Bookkeepers come across as commoditized. And that is a huge problem in your space. You know, in the past, it was seen as a noble purpose and people respected the advice that you provided. Now, just because there are so many people in the industry, just because we're living in this global economy, just because people can work with anyone really in the world now, all of a sudden, people are starting to see you as commodities, and because of that, they're starting to negotiate on price, not because that's the right choice for them, but because they don't understand your true value. And differentiation, learning to create what I call a unified message, is by far the most important thing to transforming your business. The second, though, is storytelling, and this really is focused in the story in the sales process. So we'll start with that, which is learning how to communicate in story, not jargon. See, what usually happens, especially when we sit down in the client meeting, when we're dealing with a highly logical based sale, a complex sale, where we're talking about somebody's tax return, whether they've got trust, whether they're dealing with Bitcoin, whether they have investments, IRAs, whatever we're talking about, it gets complex. And the feeling that the client has as we're trying to do all of this explanation, which we feel is in the client's best interest. No, it's not. Not when you're trying to sell to them, because they find that overwhelming, and they then go and work with someone that simplifies it for them. That may not be able to provide a better service. They just were able to make the customer feel better. So here's the thing. When I used to sell telecommunications, I remember I used to go out and I'd see sometimes a business owner with 10 brochures on their desk, all from different telecommunications companies. And I knew that they would have a better experience and more likely to work with me because I told a story, for a few reasons. Firstly, when you tell a story, it activates what's called the reticular activating system of our brain, which creates an artificial rapport because our brains synchronize. It's why when I get on stage, I start with a story. I always do my best, even in sales calls, to get to a story as quickly as possible, because as soon as I do, I feel, in a speaking case, the audience warm to me and me feel more comfortable because our brains start to synchronize. Now, introverts struggle a little bit with initial rapport, but once we've got that initial rapport, which the story will get you to, we're great at fostering deep rapport. So stories are really powerful for that reason. The second reason that's really powerful is people remember up to 22 times more information when embedded into a story. So when we're giving people firstly, stories will stop you telling them so much jargon because you have to make the jargon relatable to the story. So you won't overwhelm them. You're really just telling them a story of someone just like them who wanted what they wanted, who you got to an amazing result. And the implementation analysis part is actually the least important. It's actually the customer's journey, their problems at the beginning, their stresses at the beginning, how it was affecting their personal life, and then the outcome you brought them to and how amazing they felt or relieved they felt at the end. Now, the benefit, though, is when you tell a story, people remember up to 22 times more information. So when I sat down with someone with 10 brochures, I knew that they'd remember more of what I told them and they'd feel less overwhelmed by it because I embedded it into a story. Now, the best way to test that when I speak from stage is I say, yeah, it's pretty hard to believe. So let's talk about 3 inanimate objects for a second. Let me think. Chairs, porridge, beds. And then I'll tell somebody those 3 items and tell them, will they be able to remember them and tell me in a year's time? The answer is, of course not, right? Incredibly unlucky unless I incredibly lucky if I do, unless I write them down. But when I say, tell me the story of Goldilocks and the Three Bears, bang, she sat in some chairs, she ate some porridge, she slept in some beds. So again, when we embed stories, and I just worked with a whole group of accountants this weekend where we were literally creating their stories, and always the stories were about how they saved the customer and how, they did all this technical stuff. And I'm like, did the customer have a name? What were they stressed about? How was it affecting their lives? Did it cause struggles with the family? How are they now? All of a sudden, everything transforms. And again, all the information is much easier to remember. And then the third thing, and this is hugely important, is when you tell a story, it short circuits the logical brain and you speak directly to the emotional brain. Now, the emotional brain, literally when it short circuits the logical brain, which is the part of the brain, by the way, that's thinking, I don't have time for this, I don't understand this, this won't work for me, oh, maybe I'm interested, how much does it cost? That part literally short circuits, and the emotional brain goes, story time, and it just listens. So if you feel like your customers aren't giving you much time and they're getting straight into how much does this cost, or, oh, I need to ask these direct questions, it's because you're giving away too much jargon. You tell a story, their logical brain, which is doing that to you, will short circuit and they will just listen. We did this in door-to-door cold calling and over the phone cold calling, where we had these cold callers in their 20s calling C-level executives about corporate real estate. And all of a sudden they went from struggling to keep the client on the phone for 8 seconds to getting 2.5 minutes. And this is somebody that didn't even want to talk to them. Imagine the difference it can make for an accountant where they're actually coming in, or a bookkeeper where they're actually coming in asking for your advice and trying to get information from you. Now, the trouble is people think they tell stories, but they don't. They tell these customer wanted this, so we gave it to them, which doesn't activate the emotional brain. I'm talking stories about how you met your partner. Like my wife and I, when we tell that story, originally it started off as, it was a little bit bulkier than it could have been. And because of that, we noticed people, get less interested. So we removed those elements of the story. Then we told other parts and people liked those parts. So we embellished a little bit. Over time, it becomes a little bit of a theatrical masterpiece. I say this, my wife says that, we say this together, we hold hands, we look at each other and we say, so that's how we met. People don't tell stories like that in business. And in truth, they do not need lots of them. They need one story that they tell well, and that will create rapid growth in any business. Again, if it's armed with also having a strong niche and a great unified message so that somebody is open to hearing a lot more about what you do because they're actually interested rather than seeing you as a commodity, then again, adding stories to a structured sales process will have explosive growth.
So interesting. Now, you've written 2 books, the first being focused on sales, the second on networking. I mean, to me, these are 2 essential books that our listeners are going to want to pick up. And, many times in these episodes, I mean, you've already given us so many thoughts and ideas. I can't think of a better way if our listener wants to have rapid growth in their business to read these books.
Well, I appreciate you saying that. I think that for the listeners that are listening that just need to get over the belief that they can sell or network, again, you don't need to buy my books. I mean, you can download the first chapters for free at the Introvert's Edge and the introvertsedge.com and the introvertsedge.com/networking. Now, if you are going to go down that path, I would suggest you start with the Introvert's Edge to networking, because it'll help you to fix the problems before you even get to sales. It'll help you learn how to differentiate so your customer doesn't see you as a commodity. It'll teach you how to niche down in a way that doesn't make you feel uncomfortable. And by the way, niching doesn't mean you have to fire your current clients that don't fit in your niche or turn down referrals. Also, if you change your website, people aren't going to care that are your current clients, which was a question that came up this weekend. But it'll get those things fixed. And it'll allow you to create a dialogue to set things off on the right path when you're out networking, when you're doing podcast interviews, when you're speaking to people at events, that sort of thing. Now, once you've read The Introvert's Edge to Networking, which by the way comes with a full video implementation training in the back, completely for free, then my suggestion would be that you go to The Introvert's Edge, the first book, which focuses on sales, and then learn those 7 steps and fix those 7 steps. And again, there's a full video implementation training in the back. Actually, Global Gurus has listed the free training that comes in the back, the implementation training, as the number 2 sales development program in the world, even though it's a free training. The one just below it is worth, I think, $5,000-$10,000. This one's a free training that comes with a book. And, there's a ton of bookkeepers, accountants, other people in high-level industries that have complicated sales processes that go through that and find that they really can create a process that not just works, but actually feels congruent, feels comfortable, where they don't feel salesy, but more importantly, they feel respected and they're actually having a dialogue with customers where their information is appreciated, but also where they're working with clients that aren't harassing them, bringing their information in late so that when it comes to the end of tax season, they're not having the work-life balance that they've just become used to not having. And that's really why I would suggest doing it in the order.
I agree. I mean, when you think about, we've often had many thought leaders like yourself on the podcast talking about sales, talking about networking. You know, if you think of an area in your business, if there was one area that you could focus on that would make a massive difference, you know, it's leverage, this big leverage point. It's sales, and it's being able to sell with less energy, have more fun with it, but as well, when you master it, when you get better at it, you command more in the marketplace. And so that's more money. And then you have more money to invest in your business. You have more money to do things that you need to do. It's a heck of a lot more fun when you're making more money and you can invest and all of that good stuff. So, you know, we're talking about a book. I mean, even if the book was $100, it'd be cheap compared to, you know, the impact that it's going to have on your business. So I just love the sound of it. I'm going to get a copy. I've not read it yet. I'm going to get a copy. I'm going to get a copy for our team here, because I know it's going to make a difference. And it's been recommended by so many other thought leaders that I know and respect. I mean, Ivan Meisner, the list goes on and on and on. I mean, I was blown away by how many people say this is the best thing since sliced bread. So listener, get the book. The other thing here too is the book, buying the book it's small investment. The bigger investment is your time. And again, you've got to invest the time, you've got to do the work. And it sounds like, Matthew, you've put together a great training course to go with this. I mean, that's always the thing. It's like, oh, when am I going to read this book? Well, do the videos. You know, if you don't have the time to go and read the whole book, you've got videos there. So it sounds like this is a really great opportunity for our listener to make a difference. And what a time to do that. We're going into a new year. Let's muscle up on sales and let's muscle up on having more fun doing it.
You're absolutely right. And I have to tell you, the number of people that have reached out to me after reading the first book, The Introvert's Edge on Sales, or the networking book, but, you know, the sales book's been out a lot longer. And they said, Matt, you know, just reading your book, I mean, I have to admit, it changed my life. And I'm like, oh, great. You know, how's the sales process looking? And their response is, oh, well, I don't really have the sales process the way you've kind of highlighted yet. I'm like, okay, well, what stories are you telling? Or what one story are you using that's really transforming your sales? Oh, I haven't really created the story like you've suggested yet. And I'm like, well, how has it transformed your life then? And their response is, well, just knowing that I can has really changed my outlook on my entire business. That's not what I want for everyone listening. That's why the video implementation trainings are there, and that's why they're free. My goal is that you learn that you're not second-class citizens if you're introverts. Your path to success is just different. Then learning those steps, but learning them, I mean, that's what people do, right? They read one book, then they read the next book, then they read the next book, and they never apply anything. They tell themselves, oh, I'm just going to read a few books, and then I'm going to put together the strategies. Sales, networking, they're not like mixed martial arts. You don't get better by learning more strategies. You just get more uncomfortable and more confused, whether it's me or not. And I will say this, I mean, there are other sales experts that are introverted. Mark Hunter, Jeb Blunt, as I said, Zig Ziglar, who's no longer with us, but Tom Ziglar, his son, also introverted. There are so many people out there that are introverted that teach sales. Ivan Meisner teaches networking, and he's introverted as well. There are so many thought leaders out there. Regardless of whether you choose my books or another person's books, know that your business will always be struggling to survive if you do not learn how to network and sell. And you, even if you do learn in an extroverted way, you'll feel uncomfortable and inauthentic. So find a introverted mentor, because truthfully, that'll allow you to believe that you can do it and then do the work. What usually happens is people read the books, they then get overwhelmed because they've read multiple books, and then they go into what I call busy procrastination, which is where they go back into their day job, which we easily can call busy or make busier if we need to, and they avoid doing the work that truly needs to happen to allow them to earn the money that they truly deserve and get better price points from their clients. We then tell ourselves excuses for why it didn't work for us. So my suggestion to everybody that's listening is make sure you find a mentor, whether it's me or not, whether it's just the books or not. Find one system that you believe will work for you and then double down on putting in the work to learning that system. Don't focus on other systems. Don't focus on integrating. Don't overcomplicate it, which us introverts are amazing at overcomplicating things or overthinking things. Pick one system and do the work. My bet is that if you read my books or other mentors' books, again, as long as it focuses on a full sales system, you will be able to create a transformative difference in your business just by focusing on a series of steps, because that's what introverts need.
I absolutely love it. I can't agree more. I mean, pick one, implement it, focus on it, and away you go. And my guess is that many don't have a North Star when it comes to selling or a system around networking. And so that's why it's so brilliant that you're on the call and on this interview today, Matthew. And so I'm excited. Listener, you've got this. You can do this. You're likely introverted. It's very, very, very much a possibility knowing the community. And here is a book that was written for you to build a system around your selling, around your networking. And this is what we believe in over here, Matthew, is systems. Building repeatable systems is the pathway to freedom in your life. And so go on, do that. Matthew, you've said it a few times where they can get the free download to start if that's what they want to choose to do, or they can buy the book on Amazon, I'm thinking. But if you want to just let us know if there's those links again, of course, we'll have them in the show notes. But this has been fantastic.
Thank you very much, mate. I appreciate that. And yes, you can download the first chapter of my sales book at the introvertsedge.com. You can download the first chapter of my second book at the introvertsedge.com/networking. You're also welcome to find me on all the social profiles that are out there in the world. We put a ton of free content out to really help. I mean, I learned on YouTube, right? So I try to repay that favor all the time by putting a ton of free content, a ton of free advice and videos and all the things I can do to try and help you along in this process, to help you realize that you can sell and also exactly how to. So feel free to follow me, connect with me, reach out to me there, and just enjoy the content. You'll find that there's a ton of valuable content there that will really help you obtain rapid growth in your business.
Wonderful. Matthew, on behalf of our listener, I want to thank you for your generosity in coming on the show. And listener, I'd love for you to share. If you read Matthew's book, and you implement those systems and have a breakthrough and it makes a difference for you, let Matthew know. Let me know. I'd love to hear how you take this knowledge and make a difference with it in your life and in your business. And with that, we'll say thank you, Matthew, for being on the show.
My pleasure. Thank you so much for having me on.
Oh, it's all our pleasure. And with that, we wrap another episode of the Successful Bookkeeper podcast. To learn more about today's wonderful guest and to get access to all sorts of valuable free business building resources, you can go to thesuccessfulbookkeeper.com. Until next time, goodbye.
You've been listening to The Successful Bookkeeper with Michael Palmer. For more information and to download the resources mentioned in this episode, please visit us at thesuccessfulbookkeeper.com. Thank you for listening.